Hi, everybody. Joe here. I'm on a bit of a solo adventure today. It is May, just shortly after Mother's Day. Couple things I want to share with you before we get into kind of the meat of this episode. First of all, yes, this is solo. I conducted an interview about a week and a half ago with worship artist Sarah Kroger, and I really enjoyed the interview with her, and I wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to share it. Second of all, I am actually sharing this on 2 podcasts. So if you are listening to Frequency, this is also available on Worship Ministry Catalyst and vice versa. Why? Well, Sarah is a worship artist, and I am fortunate enough to host both of those podcasts. At the same time, Dan at Frequency has been busy lately with conferences. He is a very busy pastoral type person. And then on the WMC side, circumstances over there are keeping folks occupied at the moment, addressing various things. So that's enough said on that topic. But I love them all, and I very much look forward to getting back to regular podcasts with everybody involved. Very shortly, we'll be queuing up the interview that I did with Sarah. In the meantime, I did want to share that about a week and a half ago, our good friend Ross King released a new song. The song is called Things That I'm Afraid Of. First of all, it's a great song. He is my friend. I am a bit biased on the topic. But let me also say this. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we at the church need to talk about it more. If you've been listening to me on the Frequency podcast, and you will hear, of course, more from me on Worship Ministry Catalyst, self-care and mental health are really important to me. Things That I'm Afraid Of by Ross speaks directly to his struggles with depression over the past 5 or 6 years. And it's very vulnerable. It's well written, yes, but it's very vulnerable. And I think, well, to quote my wife, it's an important song, and it has the potential to save lives. So I will include a link in the post for the song, and I'd like to encourage you to add it to your Spotify playlist. Or even better, go ahead and buy a copy of the single, and perhaps, if it's meaningful to you, share it. We all know someone who is struggling with some kind of mental health challenge. I myself have ADD, and depression runs rampant in my family. So think about it. Listen to the song, share it with some folks who you think might benefit. I appreciate you listening to my little plea there. I'll play a little snippet of Ross's song right now. You'll get a sense of what I'm talking about.
When my depression is affecting every ounce of me, I can get the medication and the counseling. Still I can hear the fear calling out to me, and I don't feel brave, but I don't have to be, 'cause I walk through the valley of shadows, and it's scared me half to death. But you're with me everywhere I go, so I don't give up yet. My fear would surely kill me if I didn't know the truth. The things that I'm afraid of are afraid.
Well, I hope that resonated with you. I hope that you go out and buy the song. I hope you share it. And now you've listened to me blather long enough. It's time to listen to my interview with Sarah Kroger. I hope you enjoy it. I really did. I think she's wonderful. What a gorgeous voice. And the album is really solid. So check it out. And we will talk to you on the next episode of Frequency and Worship Ministry Catalyst. God bless and take care. Frequency.FM presents the Amped Interview. Okay, for the sake of full transparency, we just started to record a second time because the first time I didn't press record. So, Sarah, yeah. So the first question I ask that you're going to repeat the answer for is, I'm really interested in understanding your faith background. And if you could remember the last 5 minutes of what you said and just repeat that, that would be amazing.
Totally. I'll try to repeat it word for word. So I was raised in the Catholic Church. I'm cradle Catholic. My parents are both music ministers from the time that I was a child. So we would go to church every single weekend, go to every single mass every weekend, because they had their church choirs and they were just, leading music at the church. And I also went to the same Catholic school that was connected to that church. And so we were just very involved in our church community. And so I remember church as a child just being community. That was what it was for me. But for many years, I felt like I didn't necessarily have like a personal relationship with Jesus, because a lot of it was about, following the rules and just kind of going through the motions and doing all the practices and going through the sacraments and all that kind of stuff, which it wasn't bad to me. It was just, that was what church was. And so I remember kind of the first time that I had a very personal encounter with Jesus was at this conference called Steubenville Youth Conferences. And it's a Catholic event, but it's very charismatic. And there's like praise and worship and a band leading that. And there's lights and, it's very different from like traditional Catholic kind of
no kidding
churches. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but still very Catholic. And I remember going to that conference, and for the first time, I realized that Jesus was a real person who wanted a real relationship with me. It wasn't just about the rules. It just wasn't just about God being somewhere out there in the clouds, It was about Jesus being real and wanting a relationship with me. And it kind of just like completely changed everything for me, and changed my faith. And I dove into it in a way that I hadn't before, and really just started embracing the church in a way that I hadn't. And it really became very much about a relationship rather than about the rules and just following the practices and kind of going through the motions. It became about a relationship for me. So that's kind of a little bit about my upbringing. I'm still Catholic, and some days are easier than others.
Yeah.
But I love our faith, and what's beautiful to me about it is I feel like, especially being able to have conversations with different Protestants throughout the years, I feel like Catholics have a piece of the puzzle that Protestants don't have, and Protestants have a piece of the puzzle that Catholics don't have. And coming together, it's this beautiful picture of what the church is supposed to be. You know what I mean? And what Jesus fully intended it for it to be. I don't know what that will look like, complete Christian unity, but I really believe that we all kind of have a piece of the puzzle. And if we work together, maybe we can make something more beautiful than we've ever seen. So that's what I believe about it.
No, I appreciate that sentiment. It makes me think about, okay, what's it going to be like when we get up there, assuming we all make it, right? And go, oh, I kind of see how that fits now, and how we were all maybe mostly right and quite a bit wrong. Yeah. And thank you, God, for your grace anyway.
Exactly.
When I saw, like in the notes ahead of time, that your parents were both involved in music ministry.
Yeah.
Growing up Catholic, I remember the first time that I went to a non-Catholic church and saw them do worship music, which I didn't know what it was. It was just, that's not what we do. Right. Where is Here I Am, Lord? Where is On Eagle's Wings? Those songs that were just, I just recall showing up to church and looking on the board to see what the song numbers were, because I had memorized the song numbers of those that I really, really liked.
Yeah.
And to go in and have somebody saying, Lord, I lift your name on high, or some of those kind of, I'll call them early, but they were contemporary to me, and going, I don't know if I understand this. I don't even know if I like it. Because it was a muscle that I had never used before.
Right.
So I imagine it's a little like it must have been really shocking for you to go to a conference like that, and then to have it be completely different than what you had been used to from a worship perspective. Did it kind of throw you off your game?
Yeah, it definitely did. But I think the reason why, in the best way possible, because a lot of contemporary worship has very just different language than the traditional kind of hymns of the Catholic Church. It's very much like about Jesus and you, and kind of like, again, about relationship, and about and it kind of portrays God and portrays his nature and like things about like qualities about God in a way that I had never really thought about before, or really been it hadn't really been talked about in that way before in my experience in the church. And so I don't know. So that's kind of part of the reason why I love being a worship leader in the Catholic Church. And, you know, I do all kinds of events. It's not just Catholic events, but that's primarily where I've been for the past couple of years, as I've been developing as an artist. And that's why I love doing what I do, because I feel like there's a lot of churches, at least Catholic churches, that don't necessarily have an understanding of like the Holy Spirit. We understand the Trinity, but like there's not necessarily this relationship with the Holy Spirit or a relationship with Jesus in a personal way. It's very intellectual and kind of and not very heart-based in a lot of places, I would say. And so that's kind of why I love doing contemporary worship in the Catholic Church, is to just introduce people to this new language and this new way of thinking about God and praying to God. It's foreign in a lot of Catholic churches, and so it's kind of been fun to be able to be a part of that, a small part of helping people to recognize that through the worship.
Yeah, there's some people can say that Catholic is a little, I think I've heard the term business-like, which may or not be fair. For me, I almost had to take a step. Taking a step away from the Catholic Church made me recognize the beauty of the ritual and how there is. It can be deeply personal, but it's almost a chicken and the egg situation. That you almost have to have that personal relationship to truly appreciate the ritual that is in there, and it's and the beauty of it.
Right.
Well, I appreciate you sharing some of that journey with us.
Yeah.
We should talk about your album, which came out on April 26th. The name is Bloom.
Yes.
It's actually your third album, but it's your first with Integrity, so with a major label. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very exciting.
It's been 6 years since Hallelujah Is Our Song. We'll talk about why there's a big distance between those, but
I know it's disappointing. It really is. Well, and I've released singles along the way, but I think honestly, I was in a crazy season of life. I'd gotten married in those 6 years. We moved like 3 times, and it was just kind of a very busy season. I was very focused on, I went from being kind of part-time leading worship on the road and being a nanny part-time. And then I just decided, God kind of pushed me to make the leap and go full-time. And so I was kind of making this transition into full-time leading worship and travel and just focusing on that. And so a lot of my energy was like on personal life and on traveling, and it wasn't, and I was writing that whole time. You know, I would come to Nashville and write, and I think that was what made it the best, though, is I wasn't, for the previous albums, I would come to Nashville for a week, we'd write, and those were the songs that went on the album for my previous 2. But for this project, it was really like, okay, I want to take my time really diving into what God's trying to say through my life right now and through these experiences that I'm going through, and just kind of figure out what it is that I need to do next. And so there's a lot of space and a lot of time, and I don't think I'll ever go 5 years again, hopefully, before recording another album. But it was really, honestly, a beautiful process, just to be able to give God space to speak and allow time to happen. So yeah, it's been pretty awesome.
So the songs that are in this collection, are they? Like you just mentioned that previously you'd show up for a week and write as much as you could, and that was your album. So this is cultivated over these 5 years. Did you have like 100 songs and you went, these are the best, or did you, or how did you pull these specific songs together?
Yeah. Well, we didn't have 100 songs.
Okay.
It seems like you would in 5 years, doesn't it? But, I didn't have that many, but I had probably close to 30, I would say, that I whittled down from. And that was part of it too, that was the awesome part, is that there, for me personally, there's no like throwaway songs on the album. You know, there's no like space fillers on the album, you know, which sometimes happens when you are doing a full length project. You just need like, okay, I just need to fill song number 7, this might not be my favorite, but we'll just put it on there. But for me, these songs are really like integral in my walk, in my personal walk, and have been really just speaking into my own life and my own spiritual life, and like every single one of them. And so I'm just really proud of this project and really happy with what we came up with. And I really like every song that's on the project. I can't say that there's one that I'm like disappointed with. So that kind of having the time and to write as many as I did, and be able to really choose the ones that are really special to me was really kind of fun and good.
Now, I know that Audrey Assad was your producer. She's co-written a bunch of the songs.
Yeah.
What kind of role did she play in terms of shaping what songs we're going to make the cut? I'm sure that it had less to do with the fact that she helped write it. I'm sure that had nothing to do with.
Yeah. Well, I wrote this song, so let's put it on there. No. She was so great to work with, just incredible. And she's never produced for anybody before. She's produced for herself, but she'd never produced for anybody else. And so I was kind of a guinea pig, and I was thankful to be a guinea pig, honestly, because it went really well. And so we went in actually about a year ago, May, we went into the studio and started pre-production and just kind of sat down, and I sent her all the songs that I had ahead of time, and she listened through them and I listened through them, and we kind of both just whittled them down, talking about the theme of the album and where I was at and what I wanted to accomplish with it. And it just kind of started taking shape without us having to really put a ton of hard work into it, and we just kind of started hacking away at different songs. And I think at one point there were maybe 2 or 3 songs that we thought were going to be on it that we started working on, and then it just didn't click with the rest of the rest of the direction of the album or whatever it might be. Like we just didn't feel like it worked. And so it was kind of a process that we went through together during pre-production of figuring out what songs we wanted. And then in the middle of pre-production, we realized that we needed a middle song. So we wrote one in the middle of pre-production. So
which one was that?
That was Wildflower. That's based on, it was based on kind of the instrumental pieces that we had written. We wanted an instrumental piece to kind of tie the whole thing together from beginning to end. And so we had, a prelude and one at the very end of the album. And then we decided to write a song based on that in the very middle. So yeah, that's Wildflower.
You got those bookends of Bloom 1 and Bloom 2, realizing there's the live song at the end. And then you have Wildflower is kind of the that center point that transitions.
Yeah.
No, I think it's neat. I really love that convention of bringing people in with a theme. One thing I noticed when I listened to Pieces, which of course is the one song that you didn't write, but it was one that was an early release, is you kept some of the organic sounds of the room on the recording. Mm-hmm. So I assume that was intentional. Do you recall kind of that decision to keep the background sounds in there and what that was about?
Yeah, I think we just wanted to capture what it would be like for everyone to just feel like they were in the room with us, The rest of the songs were very much produced and kind of, you could tell they were in a studio. But I think for that particular one, we wanted kind of this moment of like making people feel like they were just sitting in the room with us, and we were just playing on a piano and I was standing next to the piano and singing it, that was kind of our intention, to make it kind of this like moment of intimacy really with the listener. So that was for sure intentional. Yeah.
Well, you definitely get that sense. To me,
thanks.
It very much drew me in. I actually didn't get a pre-release version, so thankfully this got scheduled this week so I could listen to it over the weekend. But Pieces was one of those songs that was out a little earlier that I could queue up and listen to. And I went, oh, this is special. And the interplay between your voice and Audrey's, because she's got that, that kind of pristine voice. Your voices are not dissimilar. Yours maybe a bit richer in some areas, and they just kind of work together so well. I went, okay, this is the intimacy that you're talking about, which comes across, plus the interplay of your voice. I'm like, okay. Yeah, this is going to be pretty wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
I will say that one of the things when I got the press release, not that anybody who's listening really cares about this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I always kind of scan through and say, is this somebody that I might be really interested in chatting with? And I looked at the track listing and I went, yeah, because I saw some of my favorite people, and including people that we've talked to on there. PJ Anderson, and
great.
And we've talked to Audrey before. The one that I was surprised to see was Ross King on there, and he's a really good friend of mine.
No way.
Yeah, I love Ross.
He's great.
Yeah. So I wondered if you would take a moment and could we talk about Open, which I think is a lovely song, and about how, and of course, Sarah Hart, who's on my list of people that I need to interview, and she just did a mass.
Absolutely have. Yes. Yeah. She's incredible.
And I didn't see Josh Blakesley on there, which I thought, well, where's Josh? But
he produced actually the When I See You Live track.
So he is there. Okay.
Yeah, he's on there. Yeah.
It makes me happy that I can actually name a few Catholic artists.
Exactly. I'm like, wow, I'm impressed.
Well, we got to get Sarah Hart on, and we got to get Matt on. But I think we got pretty much everybody else. Oh, not Adam. We don't have Adam. But and then Dom on there on Highest. Is that your husband?
That's my husband. Yeah.
Sneak him in there with that different last name. I see how you did that. That's cool.
Yep.
Well, anyway, so tell me about Open, how that song got written and what that represents to you.
Sure. So I wrote that with Ross King and Sarah Hart. That was the first time that I had met Ross, was that day. And we actually wrote 2 songs in a day, which was impressive for us. We got through them in like 4 hours, wrote 2 songs. And Open was just a simple idea. We just wanted to write a song about being open before the Father, and a song that I could lead during a worship set that was really easy for people to catch on to, and that just was a simple prayer of being open. And so it kind of came out super quickly. It just happened. And and Ross is just such a great writer, and he's such a funny guy, and so just incredible. So, and Sarah is the same. I mean, I've written, I think Sarah Hart and I wrote, I want to say 5 tracks on this album. She maybe got 5 cuts. So she is someone that I write with a lot, because she's such a prolific writer, specifically with lyrics. And so I just loved writing with both of them. And that song in particular was really special to me. So, and it's kind of like it's kind of got some unique chord changes in it, which I as a music person find interesting. So it's not just like the same chord pattern that a normal worship music is, so that kind of makes it interesting to me. But yeah.
So with Sarah Hart there and Ross, and they're both very lyrically strong. Do you go into the melody and music mode for that session?
Yeah, I would. So lyrics are actually my weakness, I would say. I'm not a very prolific lyric writer. I'm working on it. That's part of the reason why I moved to Nashville, is to learn from other incredible songwriters. My thing is melody. I have melodies running through my head like all day long. My voice memos are filled with all kinds of ideas, and I'm singing all the time. So melodies are for sure like where I thrive and where I have most of my ideas. So and that's why I love co-writes, is because you just kind of get in a room with people that have, everyone has their different strengths and weaknesses, and you kind of just lean on each other and you create something out of nothing. And it's the most thrilling experience, honestly. So, yeah.
That sounds wonderful. And that makes sense why you and Sarah Hart would partner up on songs then. If you're bringing that melodic strength and she's bringing lyrical strength, you really must complement each other very well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, she also has incredible melodic strength as well. But
Sure.
But it's really fun to be able to go in there and say, I have this melody idea. We do that a lot. I'll say, I have this melody idea, and she'll be like, well, what about these lyrics with it? And we'll just go to town, and it just works. So it's fun. Wonderful. Yeah.
Well, let's transition a bit, because I know that a certain inspiration came from when your parents split when you were 10. And are you comfortable if we talk about that a little bit?
Of course, yeah.
And I will say that my parents divorced when I was 19, 20 years old. And I thought this isn't going to be that big a deal because my generation, I grew up late 70s, early 80s. It seemed like everybody I went to school with, their parents were divorced. It was hard to find parents who were still together. And it seems like that happens less frequently now, or at least in the community I'm in. Could you talk to me a little bit about what that was like for you, especially with your parents in the church?
Yeah, well, it was very traumatizing, honestly, because like I had said at the beginning of this interview, so they were both music ministers at this church, at this parish, and very involved. We were very involved in the community. And so when they split, it was very messy, and everyone was involved because we were kind of in the public eye. And so it kind of forced my mom and the rest of my brother and my sister. My mom really felt like we needed to move and leave that community because it was just kind of, people were talking and it was just kind of like not a very toxic environment, and it wasn't good. And so, in a lot of ways, my mom did an incredible job because she just kept putting us at the feet of Jesus and, showing us back to church and bringing us back to church and just very much centered on Christ. And so God really, I believe, got us through that entire time. But it was a very messy time. And I ended up dealing with kind of a series of depression and anxiety. When I was 18 years old, I was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety. And I think it was because I was for so many years just kind of pushing down these emotions, pushing down these feelings, not wanting to be a burden to anybody, just kind of like pushing it down, hiding behind masks, just kind of keeping it closed off. And when I graduated from high school, I just couldn't handle it anymore. I just couldn't figure it out anymore. And so I ended up having to be on medication for a while. And I remember in that season just feeling very, very distant from God, very abandoned, very just so far away. But now looking back on that time, I can see all the ways that God was weaving in and out of my story and just taking care of every single detail, just leading me to the right doctors and the right people and the right counselor and having these different incredible friendships that really got me through, and an incredible youth group and an amazing youth minister who really just spoke into my life and really helped me in that season to go back to the Lord and find healing in the Lord. And so, although it was like the worst time of my life, and I can look back on it now and just see how God was with me in that and how it's made me who I am today. And it's just kind of crazy when you think about suffering, how obviously nobody wants it, but it's so formative and can be the thing that leads you closest to the Father's heart than anything else. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that I've ever been closer to God, and I didn't feel it in the moment, but now looking back, I can see how that scripture verse rings true. God is close to the brokenhearted, so it definitely was very formative for me and transformative, but the hardest thing I've ever walked through, for sure. And it's still, divorce is one of those things that just continues to rear its ugly head. So like when I graduated from high school, it was there. When I graduated from college, it was there. When I, got married, it was there. It's just all these different seasons of your life. You're just reminded, oh, my family is broken, so it's just interesting. It's constantly, it constantly reminds me that I need healing and need God's presence.
It's really, you say that it's really not unlike Paul and the thorn, is that, and I think about it like grief, because divorce is very much about grief as well. Something that once was alive no longer is, in terms of that covenant of marriage. And as those people who have walked through grief understand that when something is gone, dies or whatever, that, you have Christmas and you go, we're not meeting around the Christmas tree this year because Dad's here, Mom's there. And And like you said, you got married, almost 4 years ago?
Yeah.
And, the dynamic of getting married is just a little different when you're looking at, okay, when I got married in 2000, and, my parents had been divorced for 10 years or something, but it's still like, okay, I mean, you guys get along okay, but there's something incomplete about this experience.
Right.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I especially appreciate the fact that your willingness to share how it hurt, but also, as you're coming out of that, you were surrounded by people, you embraced some resources to help you, and that you weren't afraid to say anxiety and depression, because sometimes we struggle with that in the church to acknowledge that these are real things, and we need to lift people up.
Well, for sure. And I think a lot of people, more people than we know, struggle with it. And it's kind of like this stigma, especially against like getting help outside of just like a pastor, like there are things like, for me, it was a chemical imbalance, and there was no amount of, therapy that was going to fix that. I needed medical intervention, and that's why God made medicine. That's why God made medicine to help us out. And praise God, I was able to wean off of it, but I needed it for a certain amount of time. And there's people who need it, and that doesn't make you, any less of a person than anyone else. It just means that there's something a little bit off, and you just need a little bit extra help, but I definitely think that there's a stigma out there against it, and people just don't like to talk about it because it's, it's kind of uncomfortable. And, but I'm kind of like, well, I needed it and it got me through, and it really honestly saved my life. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's
welcome.
That's just good for us to, I think it's good for people to hear that it's so that God can work in many different ways. It doesn't just have to be a miracle that shoots out of the sky. It's through people. It's through science. It's through all kinds of things. We just need to be open to it and be careful about shame. Shame's one of those things that I really I'm anti-shame. So
Me too. I agree.
Well, we've used up most of your time here. We didn't even talk about how much time we would be talking. So we've been talking for just about a half an hour, and I want to respect your time. But there was one more question I was going to ask you.
Sure.
We have talked a little bit about self-care.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have, it sounds like self-care is part of what you do to stay healthy, both, mentally, spiritually, emotionally.
Yeah.
What's your go-to self-care?
That's a great question. For me, honestly, I love, this is going to sound super, maybe over spiritual, but I have been really into making sure that I take a Sabbath every week. And what I mean by that is, so most weekends I'm traveling on Sundays. I'm at an event, or I'm working at an event, or I'm, traveling back from an event. And so I noticed maybe about a year ago that I was just getting really burnt out, like to the point where I was like, I don't know that I can do this anymore. And I realized what I was doing was I would get home from an event and I would work Monday through Friday, and then I would fly out to another event and I would work Friday through Sunday, and I would just work constantly.
Yeah.
So I've been really trying to take either Monday or Tuesday or just any day during the week and just take it off. Whether that's, going and golfing with my husband. We really like to golf. We sound like a pair of 80-year-old retirees from Florida, but we love to golf. Or whether it's, going to church or having, I love to have silent time, which sounds ironic because I'm a worship leader and I do love to pray with worship, but silence is huge for me. It's a huge way that I connect with God and just find my kind of grounding again. So I would say Sabbath days are a huge way that I kind of take care of myself. And also I see a therapist and I work out and, try to just stay healthy and hydrated. And I'm pretty crazy about my voice when it comes to seasons when I'm traveling a lot. Like I don't drink, and I really am careful about what I eat, things like that. So yeah, just a lot of self-care things, but mostly just taking a Sabbath day, taking a day or two off every single week has been huge in my walk. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I don't think it is over spiritual to say you take a Sabbath, because so many of us, we struggle to take time off because we live in a society that doesn't affirm us for taking that time off. And so good for you for being assertive enough with yourself to say, I need this time off. And and for putting those barriers around to make sure that you have it.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I've really enjoyed this. I think we could probably talk a lot longer, but I also want people to listen and not shut it off after they get tired of hearing me. So just to remind people that the release is Bloom. It came out April 26th, so it's already available. Yeah. I know that you can stream it, folks, but we like to support artists. So why don't you go ahead and just buy it? And then you can stream it as much as you want, but consider investing as a small investment in an excellent artist.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Frequency.FM is a podcast featuring Christian artists, authors, creatives, and experts. For more music reviews, book reviews, and articles, please visit us at frequency.fm.